Hello there and welcome back to the channel where today we are back with another video from the Phoenix news branding of the channel part. This is not another Tycoon news video. As I mentioned in February's Tycoon news, we had an interview with Stab from Spartan Games, who's currently developing Gym Empire. If you don't know what any of that is, this interview will definitely inform you all about that. This is also an edited version, not every question is in the interview. I didn't want to upload a 45-minute video. We really did talk for a long time. However, I am going to let Stav introduce himself, and I will let everything else pan out as it did. So thank you for watching, and I will see you at another video and another Tycoon news in March at the end of the month.
So I'm here to talk about Gym Empire, a game that I'm currently developing. It's a tycoon game, indie tycoon game, based around developing a gym and trying to start it from the ground up, basically. Something like from your garage or from like a storage closet, and to try and build it up into essentially a gym empire.
Well, I mean, that sounds very interesting. I haven't seen myself, at least, many gym-focused management games, so I'm definitely excited for that. If anyone wants to have a look at that before we carry on, there will be links above me and below me. But have you developed any other games apart from the upcoming Gym Empire that you've mentioned here?
So yeah, I actually started game developing games back in early 2017. The first game I ever developed was just a game for Android. It was Cute Cat Splat. It was just some kind of fun little, easy to make, easy to play kind of game, and it was just to get a bit of a taster for game development. I've been a long-term gamer and really enjoyed playing games all my life, and I'm also a software developer by trade, I suppose. I did then move on to another game, Glow. So that was the first proper game, I suppose, that I developed, and that was an indie platformer I created back in 2017. And with that, I suppose, after creating Cute Cat Splat, I was really interested in game development. I knew it was something that my heart was like fully in.
Well, that's very interesting. I have checked Glow myself. I haven't played too much of it, but it was enjoyable. Is it something I haven't played before? It's definitely interesting from my point of view. But how did you come to the idea of Gym Empire? I mean, did you just wake up one morning and go, well, we'll do that, I know what this is, or did you find the idea somewhere else?
I kind of had ideas for a game like Gym Empire even before I started Glow, to be honest. But once I'd released Glow, I mean, I did that in 3 months and tried to challenge myself. And I was really satisfied with the progress I'd made on that, and really pleased with the outcome. And I thought I was much more confident to take a bigger challenge. So there were 2 paths for me to pick. One of them was to go down a story-based game. But the other type of game that I'm really passionate about are tycoon games. And one of the last tycoon games I really remember getting really stuck into, forgive me for saying, was actually a mobile game, but it was it was Game Dev Story, which some people might be familiar with. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a lot like Game Dev Tycoon. And what I loved about Game Dev Story was that it really captured that nice, fun side of tycoon game, which we are seeing come back a lot more now, actually, which I'm pleased to see.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of those kind of, not a resurgence of more of them, I guess.
Yeah, they're trying to capture that more retro feel, but with obviously modern gameplay mechanics, which is great. I wanted to make a tycoon game which could be as engaging as you expect a tycoon game to be, but to also capture that more fun and lighthearted side of things. And at the same time, something that I was really quite heavily into at the time was fitness and keeping fit and the whole fitness industry. And I used to listen to a podcast. I still do, actually. It's actually a podcast by a guy named Joe DeFranco. And part of the intro of the podcast is a little intro sequence, and it mentions about him starting from a storage closet and building his way up to like a really successful world-renowned gym. And I just thought that would be a really cool idea to capture in game format. And I just thought a tycoon type of game or a management simulation game would be a perfect opportunity for that.
So I guess that kind of covers the next question, which is why choose a gym as the main theme. But
Yeah, I mean, I guess mainly because I really like the idea of it. Like I mentioned, the interest I had with being into fitness and that podcast in particular that inspired me. The sensible thing to do when you are trying to create a computer game, especially as an indie, is to see how many other times it's been attempted, and if it's been attempted many other times and good enough or well enough that
Yeah.
you don't think you could improve on it, then there isn't really much reason to go and chase that. You want to try and give players a new experience. And I didn't really find, especially on PC, I didn't find anything to do with gym management, especially in like a Tycoon game. I felt like it was a prime opportunity to try and create a new gaming experience.
Oh well, that's very interesting. Are you developing? Of course, you're developing games. I think more as a hobby, from what you said. But is it
Mm-hmm.
something you would ever imagine doing full time? If
So I started off as a hobby to start with. Like I said, to do something that I enjoy and learn at the same time. But pretty quickly, and around about the time I started developing for Glow, I realized I'd never had a hobby that I enjoyed so much, that I gained so much from, and never tired of. To be honest,
yeah,
it bordered on obsession, if I'm being honest. And I absolutely love doing it as I do now. And if this was the only way I could pursue it, I would happily. But if I could get the opportunity to do it full time, it would be a dream to make it my career.
from what you said about having to spend all this time developing the game, I'm sure you spent a lot of time sitting at your desk. Have you managed to naturally stay fit, given it's a gym empire game?
Yeah, it'd be a bit ironic if I didn't, wouldn't it?
Well,
So, so when I first started developing Glow, like I said, I was really quite heavily into my fitness, and this Joe DeFranco podcast that I used to listen to, I still do actually. They were running a bit of a fitness competition at the time, and I just thought for personal reasons it would be a bit of fun to try and follow along with it. And it was kind of weird. I didn't plan for it to work this way, but it started. I started the competition around about the time that I started Glow, and it was a 3 month competition, and I developed Glow in 3 months. And I was waking up 4 times a week to work out for an hour, and then trying to squeeze in some game development. And if you were to ask me months before if I'd be able to do something like that, I'd have said no chance. I'd say no. You know, being a husband and a father, I'd say there's no way I could find time to do that and do the family things that I want to as well.
yeah.
But somehow I managed to get out the end of those 3 months, and I'd not missed a day on the exercise, and I'd completed Glow and shipped it onto Steam.
I mean, the way you say how you've challenged yourself there to make the Glow and to keep fit at the same time, and you manage both things, I think yes, yeah, I agree. It's a good way to demonstrate to yourself and I guess to others that if you, I mean, set your mind to something, that's something you can manage. Which I think that's great. Anyway, next question in terms of that. What are some of your favorite features you've developed in the game so far? You've spoken about the game and how you've used some examples from your real life, but how have they translated into the game, and what are some of your favorite features from that?
So I mean, the game right now, I'm still like, I hadn't realized how. I knew how much work. Well, no, I knew it was going to be a lot more work creating a simulation management game, but I hadn't quite realized how much more work it was going to be, even getting that game to a state where you could even consider it something playable. The past year and a half has been so much foundation work being put into Gym Empire that there's a lot of features still that I plan to put in that I just haven't gotten to that stage of development yet. That will be in, even when it comes into an early access release, that I hope will stand out and make it a more enjoyable experience. Are things like the humor side of things that I plan to incorporate, things like clients failing on equipment, falling off the treadmill, for example.
Yeah.
Then that humor side of things, I don't plan to just be something of a gimmick, but actually part of the gameplay. So if clients are inadequate and you don't have staff, or you don't personally with your character actually help train them and monitor them on equipment, they might fall. If they fall, then they might want to try and sue you. If they sue you, then you lose money and you lose reputation. I didn't want it to just be a tycoon game where you just start and just keep trying to make your gym just a bit bigger and a bit bigger. I wanted it to genuinely feel like you're building an empire and you're building it in a way that you want to build it. So a couple of other things to try and tie in with that are, one, the direction that you'll take your gym in. Are you going to take it down the path of a more commercial style gym where, you know, like mums and dads or whatever will just come and turn up and work out for a bit? No one's pushing themselves maybe to like extreme levels, but everyone's just having a good time, keeping fit. Could be a type of gym where you've got classes. Or do you want a more gritty type of gym where maybe you've got meatheads and people who are looking to body build, or maybe do strength training competitions? So you could have that more hardcore kind of gym. Or you could even have much more specialized gyms, whether it's a boxing gym. There's a lot of like these almost celebrity kind of muscle, meatheads or whatever. And I plan to have like an ability where certain clients that maybe are dedicated and you work with them a lot or whatever can actually get to like celebrity status. And then when they're at celebrity status, they can then attract a lot more customers to your gym. And as you progress, you can earn more money to then buy new premises. And as you move to like a new area and buy new premises, the types of premises you can buy will be dictated by whether there's expandability, or if it's in, let's say, a heavily populated area. Maybe you can't expand that gym, but you've got to work with it and try and make the best of it. Also,
so your decisions earlier on are more influencing how you can grow the gym once you get to later in the game, you mean?
Yeah, kind of, I suppose. So let's say after the first few hours and you've built up, let's say, enough money training clients from your storage closet, you'll have enough money to then buy another premises. Now you can either sell your original first premises or any of the ones that maybe you've accrued to make more money, or you can keep all the ones that you've accrued to have like a number of them that will like maintain themselves in the background. You could have one premises where it's, let's say, in a heavily populated city kind of urban area where you're going to have a lot more clients, possible clients walking past, but that's going to be limited because you can't actually expand because there's other buildings around you that you can't knock down. Or your other option might be one that could be cheaper, but it could be in a more out of town kind of area where you're not going to have as many people just walking past and maybe not as many clients, but there could be more space around there, which would give you the opportunity to build your gym to be a bigger one. And in theory, for me, I guess the way I would play it is I would try and have as many different premises in different locations with all of them staff up so they can make money to build like an empire of gyms in multiple areas. Or you could just try and put it all into one super gym.
Super gym.
Super gym, yeah.
I like that idea of having to choose like I guess more of a theme, I guess is the best way to summarize it, but the path and how it's going to affect stuff in the future. And the random incidents part, that actually sounds very interesting in terms of, I guess it would affect, I don't know, if you fall off a bike, it would affect ratings and stuff as well, I guess, I don't know, safety and staff and stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
From all of those features, what have you found to be the most challenging part of development so far? Has it been thinking of the ideas, or has it been more like, I don't know, art or programming, or what do you think's been hardest?
To be honest, thinking of the ideas, it takes so long to create a game like this that you've literally got all the time in the world. I find I'm thinking ideas quicker than I can write them down. I had to literally make a list of everything that people had mentioned in Reddit. Everything when I'm driving in the car, I've got like my phone setups, and you ask people in a focused area like Tycoon Reddit what they'd like to see in a gym type game, and the ideas just people are like more than willing to like.
Yeah, these people just have tons of ideas. They may not be able to execute them, but
yeah, I probably won't be able to do all of them. But even just trying to, even just having those ideas to work off is the three top hitters, which have taken me the longest time. First of all, is it's a natural looking ragdoll accident animation. That's been a little bit tricky, and I think if you were to speak to somebody that's been developing games for like the past 10 years or whatever, they wouldn't find that difficult at all. But for me, on my personal journey and learning everything from scratch by myself, that's one thing that's challenged me a bit. The next thing was, and I think a lot of developers would probably agree with this one, is collision avoidance. Now, collision avoidance inherently isn't that difficult a thing to do.
By collision avoidance, do you mean more objects, or do you mean like the people walking around?
The people walking around. So I can have an individual avoid any object quite naturally. That works nicely, but it's not so bad as well when there's maybe 10 characters walking around. But with a Tycoon game where you can have multiple characters, like and in theory possibly into like the 50 or like or more characters walking around, getting them to plan a route amongst a sea of constantly moving objects is an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare, and I battled with that one for absolutely ages. But the current bugbear for me, and I wouldn't, being a gamer, I would never have thought this was going to be such an issue. And Glow, it wasn't an issue at all. It was really simple. But saving the game and loading it, it's just proved to be a much bigger challenge than I expected it to.
Something that sounds something like simple as simple sounding as that. Just
so, like I say, for a platform, it's quite simple. A few numbers here and there, just to be able to say, okay, it was this level and it was this score and there were these things unlocked. But with a Tycoon game, where pretty much every single thing is data, whether it's location of clients, what piece of equipment they were going to work on, where that piece of equipment was, how long they were on the equipment for.
Just a growing list of different variables.
On and on and on. To try and change all that code data into something that is just essentially a text file that can then be reread as a text file and then turned right back into the game code. It was a challenge. So I'm pleased to say I've found a solution.
On that topic of other games, I mean, what is your favorite Tycoon simulation game from recent time, or not recent, any time?
From recent time, I really like a game called Startup Company. I don't know if you've come across that one.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, I don't get to play games as much as I'd like to now. It's either make games or play them.
I've heard a lot of people speak about it. It's definitely one that a lot of people love. On the topic of stuff like Startup Company, do you think indie games like yours and others get enough exposure, have enough opportunities for exposure nowadays compared to, well, not compared to anything, just in general?
It's a difficult one to say, because I guess it's kind of relative, because it depends what exposure you expect from an indie game. If you were to go back to like the 2000s, indie games didn't get any exposure at all, and then suddenly, like with the power of the internet, you see with Steam, with things like indie game the movie, popularity and public awareness grew, so the game suddenly fell into the spotlight, and then you'd say they got a lot of exposure and a lot of attention. But then now we're on the end of, or at the point where everyone's saying it's the apocalypse. Steam isn't given as much visibility for indie games and all this, that, the other. And I guess relatively speaking, compared to the peak of indie games, we're certainly not getting as much as we used to. But I think the reality is that was kind of a gift, if you know what I mean. It was through the power of Steam, and if it wasn't for Steam, this holy grail of indie games at one point, then it wouldn't be there. So I think Steam's just a bit of a unrealistic expectation on visibility. And where I think it's at right now is I think it's at probably a much more natural place. And I know a lot of indie developers probably wouldn't want to hear that, or maybe not even agree with it, but I feel like indie games now are in a position where they're in a fair place where we can be seen, but to be seen, it requires a lot of effort on our part. It's not a case where we can just
It's not
make a game
handed to you on a plate, really.
exactly. And there's a lot of like fellow indie developers that have had games out over the last year or so that have been successful and suddenly start to see a decline in visibility and sales. But there's some that end up just maybe really thinking that that's the way it is and that's the way they've got to live with it. But then there's other ones which then got other avenues, got other options.
Yeah, you see stuff like other stores opening and that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a developer of Computer Tycoon, a guy called he goes by the developer name Indy Andras, and he's posted quite a bit about the decline in visibility from Steam. But what he's done is he's been really proactive and tried to find other ways, and he's posted about how he's been using Facebook ads to get more. What he's done is he's tried it, he's been almost scientific in his approach, and he's found a way that he's now seeing equivalent, if not slightly improved visibility in sales.
There's a lot of people playing games, a lot of games myself in Tycoon games. A lot of developers don't speak to anyone about it. They just release it and expect it to do well, I guess.
Yeah.
That's from the influence of, as you said, things being that way a while ago, but I guess you can't really have that expectation anymore.
No, and I know it's hard. I know it's really hard. I mean, I think by nature we can probably be quite introverted and a lot more comfortable that way.
Yeah. And
I remember thinking, they had some indie spots there. I'd throw out an email, see what the chances were there. You know, Glow was in a pretty complete state. It was about a couple of weeks before release, and I had a good press kit set up and everything. But I thought, you know, I probably wouldn't get picked. Cut it short, I got selected for the Play Expo to showcase. Free spot, 2 days. And as soon as that email came through, I looked at my wife and I felt excitement and dread at the same time. And that was the first time where I had to literally come away from the comfort of my laptop screen and actually speak to real people about something I was making. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what? I said, it would be so much easier just sitting behind this laptop and making a game and putting it out and just hoping for the best. But I just knew that wasn't the point and that wasn't the best way to go about things.
Lastly, I have to ask, what is your favorite candy, your favorite sweet, chocolate, whatever you want to call it?
I might be a boring one on this one, but good old dairy milk. Can't beat a dairy milk. I love Cadbury's chocolate, and to just have a...
Well, thank you for, well, not physically, I don't know if you're sitting down, but thank you for sitting down and speaking with me here, going through some of these questions that were asked by a couple of curious people on the internet.
Brilliant. I appreciate the questions.
If anyone is interested after seeing this and would like to see more, there'll be links to the Discord, there'll be websites, there'll be Steam pages, everything for you to look at in the description. Cool. And unless you have any final words, I think that might be it for today.
Well, I've got one question for you. What's your favourite candy?
Oh, it has to be M&M's. There, it's the only thing.
M&M's.
Yeah.
I was eating M&M's today, actually, but the American ones, though. Have you ever tried them?
Yeah, I had a friend come. He came back from holiday recently, and he gave me some American M&M's.
Yeah,
they seem a
they're
little
quite
more
different,
nutty.
though.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really appreciate the chat. Actually, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate the questions and the interest in Gym Empire. So thank you very much.